walk into a gym, or a vape shop, or your cousin's garage while he's doing something to an engine that definitely voids the warranty, stand there for 60 seconds and listen. There's a good chance somewhere in the room, very faintly, a guy with a deep voice is talking about elk meat.
Mostly elk. Well, elk's my favorite for two reasons. One, it's very delicious, super nutritious. Also, if I shoot one elk, I can eat it for like 8 months.
What, you do,
like
freezing them,
salting
them?
Yeah, freezing them.
Or aliens.
Aliens, they always have eyes facing forward. And in nature, things that have eyes facing forward are generally predators.
Sure.
Things that have eyes on the side, like a deer or a pronghorn, they're looking for coming at them. So they're like looking left and right, but when something has eyes going forward, it's looking to attack generally, like cats and wolves. They have eyes facing forward.
Right.
And aliens have eyes facing forward, which is interesting.
Or how DMT might be how ants communicate.
How do ants can communicate? Because like if you see like leafcutter ants, which I have in my neighborhood, leafcutter ants colonies that they have underground, where there are these sophisticated systems of ventilation, and they're literally fermenting leaves down there. It's like, what?
I know.
How do you know? How are you doing this? How are you building a village?
Or why seed oils are quietly destroying everyone's testosterone.
Paul Saladino sent me some data on seed oils. And they're connecting seed oils and consumption of seed oils, which is in everything, to macular degeneration, or to some people's vision issues. Was that what it was? Make sure that that's correct.
Seed oils?
Yeah, seed oils. Like,
you don't even have to find the speaker. You just know. That's the sound of Joe Rogan. Doing what he does now better than almost anyone alive. Existing in the background of millions of men's days, whether they went looking for him today or not. And somewhere in the building, there's a guy, probably your uncle, possibly your coworker, maybe the guy at the next bench press over, who will tell you what Joe said, who has restructured at least 3 personal beliefs in the last 2 years based on something he heard an hour or two of a 3-hour conversation between a comedian and a researcher who studies elk. This video is about how that happened. Not why Rogan is good or bad, not a political autopsy, just the honest story of how a UFC commentator who started recording himself and his friends talking in his house for fun accidentally became the default soundtrack for a huge chunk of American men. And the guy your uncle quotes like a peer-reviewed journal. Let's go back further than you probably expect. Because before the podcast, before the Spotify deal, before hundreds of millions of dollars, Joe Rogan was a completely different kind of famous. He was the Fear Factor guy.
Like, that's one of the best things about my career is like I will forever always be the Fear Factor guy.
From 2001 to 2006, Rogan hosted NBC's Fear Factor, a primetime network stunt show where contestants ate insects, jumped off helicopters, and stuck their heads in boxes full of rats in front of millions of viewers on a Tuesday night. It was mainstream in a way that podcasts simply are not. Your grandmother knew who he was. And before that, he was a cast member on the NBC sitcom News Radio, running from 1995 to 1999, a critically beloved ensemble show about a New York radio station. Rogan played Joe Garelli, the station's street-smart electrician and resident conspiracy theorist, which in hindsight is genuinely funny casting.
Way to go, dude. I can't believe you pulled it off.
I didn't pull anything off. That was a mistake, Joe.
Look, I got it on tape. We can make copies. $10, $15 a pop for these.
What?
I got blank tapes in my van. We'll bang it out over lunch.
Oh, no, Joe.
It's a big market.
Oh,
Same people
God.
buy sports bloopers.
Oh, God, Joe, no.
Look, don't worry about your cut. I'll break you off a piece. Just keep it up with the mistakes.
Starting as a backstage interviewer at UFC 12 in Alabama in 1997,
Thanks, Bruce. I'm back here right now backstage. I'll be interviewing the fighters as they come out of the octagon, and I'll also be previewing the fights, the final fights in each weight division. I'll be talking to the fighters. We'll find out who's injured, who's going to be able to continue, and who's going to go in if we need an alternate. Anything we need to know, as soon as I find out, you'll know.
before transitioning to color commentary in 2002, a role he still holds today. The point is, by the time Joe Rogan sat down with Brian Redban on Christmas Eve 2009, and hit record for the first time. He was not an unknown comedian taking a shot in the dark. He was a man who had spent 15 years inside the mainstream television machine, NBC primetime, network sitcoms, live sports broadcasting, who had consciously decided he wanted to do something different. Something without a network's hand on his shoulder telling him what he could and couldn't say. That context matters. It's the first ingredient in the whole story. Joe Rogan starts podcasting on December 24th, 2009. Comedians sitting around, smoking, riffing for 2 or 3 hours with basically no agenda. It's a hangout. It starts less with a bang and more with Brian Redban explaining how the recording software works for 5 minutes while the audio rolls.
Start broadcast. And then
Update to Twitter.
And then when we get fancy, we could put your website address, or we put graphics and all that stuff.
Which one is your water?
This one.
It's cold. Hi, everybody.
And then if you want to watch the chat, you click on this, and people could chat live, you know?
But here's what made it work in the early days, before anyone was paying attention. The guests. Not famous guests at first. Comics, fighters, Ari Shaffir, Joey Diaz, Eddie Bravo, Duncan Trussell. People from Rogan's actual life talking about things they genuinely cared about. Slowly, over a few years, the range widens. Scientists come in. Authors. The show becomes a place where a neuroscientist might sit down the same week as a cage fighter. Where the topics aren't defined by a booker or a format note. Just whatever Rogan is curious about that week. That formula sounds simple. But it was genuinely rare in 2012, 2013, 2014. Long-form, unedited conversation was not what media was doing. Everything was getting shorter. Attention spans, the conventional wisdom said, were shrinking. Twitter was rising. The clip was king. And Rogan went the opposite direction. 3 hours, uncut, no breaks, no polish. Now, here is something that most analyses of the JRE phenomenon get wrong. They assume the audience grew because people sat down and listened to 3-hour episodes. And some did. But for a huge percentage of the audience, maybe most of it, the actual entry point was much shorter than that. It was a clip, a 12-minute fragment on YouTube titled something like, Joe Rogan and Elon Musk talk about simulation theory.
Be some simulation.
It could. Do you entertain that?
Well, the argument for the simulation, I think, is quite strong, because if you assume any improvement at all over time, any improvement, 1%, 0.1%, just extend the time frame, make it 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. What would civilization, if you count it, if you're very generous, civilization is maybe 7,000 or 8,000 years old.
Or Joe Rogan explains DMT.
DMT is the psychoactive ingredient that's in ayahuasca. And
Right,
it's
right.
the most potent psychedelic.
Seems like a cleaner way to do it as opposed to ayahuasca, where you throw up and shit yourself.
Yeah. It's definitely probably. It's also quicker. You know, like the longest it's going to take is like 15 or 20 minutes.
Uploaded to the JRE Clips channel, which ran separately from the full episodes. These clips were the gateway drug. Someone sent your uncle one at work. He watched it on his phone. He thought, this guy gets it. And then he went looking for me. By the time full episodes moved exclusively to Spotify in 2020, the Clip channel on YouTube had already done years of distribution work. It had seeded the audience everywhere. Your uncle didn't discover Rogan by browsing Spotify. He discovered him because someone forwarded him a 4-minute clip, and 6 months later, he was listening to full episodes on his commute and calling them, not that long, honestly. That's the clip machine. That's how the uncle pipeline actually starts. Not with 3 hours, with 4 minutes. Then, in 2020, Spotify makes its move. An exclusive deal widely reported at the time, around $100 million, later confirmed by the New York Times as worth more than $200 million. Rogan records a casual announcement No music, no production, just him talking to a camera the way he always has. And tells his audience the podcast is moving platforms, it'll still be free, nothing about the show is changing.
Hello, everybody. I have an announcement. The podcast is moving to Spotify. I signed a multi-year licensing agreement with Spotify that will start on September 1st. Starting on September 1st, the entire JRE library will be available on Spotify as well as all the other platforms. Then somewhere around the end of the year, it will become exclusive to Spotify, including the video version of the podcast. It will be the exact same show. I am not going to be an employee of Spotify. We're going to be working with the same crew doing the exact same show. The only difference will be it will now be available on the largest audio platform in the world. Nothing else will change. It will be free. It will be free to you. You just have to go to Spotify to get it. We're very excited to begin this new chapter of the JRE, and I hope you're there when we cross over. Thanks.
A lot of people are upset. They don't want to download a new app. The comments are mostly negative, then they download the app anyway. Because that's the thing about the uncle. Once you're in, you're in. The switching cost of leaving, of finding something else to fill 3 hours 4 times a week, is genuinely high. Rogan had built something that was easier to follow than to replace. Even if you were annoyed, you were still listening. JRE becomes Spotify's most streamed show year after year, and by 2024, Spotify renews for a deal reportedly worth up to $250 million, except now the show isn't locked to one app anymore. Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, all at once. On Spotify alone, the show sits at around 14.5 million followers. No other podcast on the platform comes close. The next closest show is around a third of that size. So who's actually listening to all of this? About 80% of the JRE audience is male. The majority fall between 18 and 34. Politically, the audience is genuinely mixed. Independents, Republicans, and Democrats all represented. But it skews toward a certain kind of engaged, news-adjacent guy who is no longer getting his information from legacy media. Translate that into real life and you get the uncle, the coworker, the guy doing your lift, the personal trainer who starts every third sentence with "I heard Rogan say," as if Joe personally called him this morning. It's not just one demographic pocket. It's wide enough to cover your 25-year-old cousin and his 55-year-old dad at the same dinner table, both quoting the same Tuesday episode and finding, to their mutual surprise, that they agree. For a certain kind of guy, Rogan has fully replaced what used to be morning drive time radio, replaced sports talk, in a lot of houses, replaced the evening news. You used to have a guy who quoted talk radio hosts in ties with call letters and a studio jingle. Now you've got a guy quoting a bald man in a hoodie who just spent 3 hours talking to a bow hunter about elk migration patterns.
It's a hard thing to do, to an elk.
And people don't realize.
No, they don't. And if you look at a clip, like there's clips of me online, and the clip is like a minute long, and it seems like, oh, look how easy.
Yeah.
You don't see stalking in for hours. You don't see the hundreds of hours of shooting arrows, the coaching from John Dudley, all the reading archery articles, and understanding what, and keeping your mindset clear in the moment. It's a lot of difficult.
And somehow that conversation is Tuesday's headline in your group chat. So why does this specific format work so well as wallpaper for the male brain? First, length. Episodes regularly run 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours. That is not a podcast episode. That is a full work shift's worth of sound. You put it on once and you do not have to think about content again until lunch. Second, decision fatigue. Picking a new show every single day is actual cognitive labor. There are thousands of podcasts. Most of them are fine. Choosing between fine things is surprisingly exhausting. Somewhere around 2015, your uncle made one decision and never had to make it again. The only show he needs is the one where a guy talks to a bow hunter.
You know, I got into hunting. I don't know if meat was up on high on the list. I was just a young kid. Just wanted to hunt, wanted to get my buck. Hey, you get your buck. That's all I wanted to do is get my buck. And then, but now the meat is, man, it's it's as much as the antlers for sure.
Yeah.
You know, just getting that meat, hundreds of pounds of meat, bringing it home, eating it, fuels us for everything we do. And it's like, to me, I mean, at our age, we're the same age now, but not long ago, our age was old.
We were dead.
Yeah, I feel better than I've ever felt.
Then a neuroscientist.
We're trying to figure out the answers to two problems. The first problem is how to regenerate the damaged nervous system, in particular the connections between the eye and the brain, to restore vision to the blind. So that's a big mission of ours. And to prevent vision loss in people that are losing their vision. And the other thing that we're doing is we're focusing a lot on stress and other states of mind. So I'm obsessed with the idea that all our states of mind come from the brain and the body. And we're trying to figure out what happens in the brain and body when we're stressed and how to control it. What happens in the brain and body when we are creative and how to control it.
Then a UFC fighter for 4 hours.
Reaching my highest potential. I'm like, damn, how we're so close. We're number one right now. I want to be the champ, and I want to be, I want to see how far I can take this. I want to be recognized as one of the greatest ever too. And I don't want to just be recognized as a striker that knocks people out. I want to be, I don't want to just, Alex Pereira's like known just for striking. Izzy was kind of just known for striking. I feel like I've underrated jiu-jitsu, underrated grappling, and I've been training a lot, and I want to start like ideal scenario, I fight Aljo or Henry, I would love to choke one of these dudes.
Multiple times a week, forever. That decision is done. He can spend that mental energy elsewhere. Third, it's just there. Spotify, YouTube, Apple, JRE shows up on all of them without your uncle needing to learn a new app or follow a new account. No curation required. The algorithm just keeps serving it because he's already listened to 900 hours of it. Add it all up and you get the default. Not the best show, not even necessarily his favorite, just the thing that's on when nothing else has been decided. The male screensaver. If the garage is quiet and nothing else is happening, it's Rogan time. There's a fourth reason, though, and this one is psychological, which is why it doesn't get talked about enough. When you spend 3 hours listening to someone have an unscripted, unedited conversation with pauses and tangents and moments of genuine confusion, your brain starts to process that person as a friend, not consciously, just neurologically. The same circuits that build actual social bonds start firing. The informality, the humor, the occasional awkward silence, all of it registers as intimacy. By the end of a long episode, you feel like you hung out with someone, even if you were mostly zoned out, doing dishes, lifting weights, driving. You feel like you were in the room. And this is why the uncle defends Rogan the way he defends a friend. Not a celebrity, not a brand, a friend. After 400 hours of this guy's voice in your ears, your brain has filed him under people I know. Criticizing Joe is, to your uncle's nervous system, a little bit like criticizing someone he actually likes. Now, you might expect that by 2026, something would have come along to dethrone this. A challenger. A newer, shinier version of the same formula. Plenty of things have tried, but the uncle has not switched, and the reason is simple. Nothing else has the back catalog. JRE has over 2,000 episodes going back to 2009. If you discover it today, you are not just signing up for a show. You are signing up for a library. 15 years of conversations with scientists, fighters, comedians, psychologists, hunters, soldiers, and the occasional sitting head of state.
And one of the guys in North Carolina said, could you do me a favor? Do you know Elon Musk? Yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement, too. The tough. He said, the country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe, because you cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person. I know you. I've watched you. I know him better than he does. You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. I have watched you for so many years. You're not a Kamala person. You're a Khabib person, but you're not a Kamala person. No.
You could listen to nothing else for years and never run out of content you haven't heard. A newer podcast cannot build that. They can only start from zero and grow slowly, which means your uncle, who found JRE 3 years ago and is still catching up on 2017 episodes, has absolutely no reason to look anywhere else. Now here's the part that is actually a little wild if you zoom out. Somewhere in that 3-hour, no agenda, I'm just a comedian format, Rogan quietly became a primary news source for a huge number of people who would never describe themselves as podcast listeners. The Reuters Institute at Oxford's 2025 Digital News Report found that 22% of American respondents said they had come across news or commentary from Joe Rogan in the week after the presidential inauguration. 1 in 5 Americans getting some portion of their information from a podcast host who insists he is just a curious comedian asking questions. That is not an alternative media statistic. That is cable news territory. We are not going to wade into what that means politically. We're just noting that the show has become a genuine input into how a lot of people understand the world, not just entertainment they happen to have on in the background. Your uncle's cable news is now 3 hours of Joe Rogan asking a scientist, a fighter, and occasionally a sitting politician what they think about mushrooms and free speech.
Mushrooms were specifically banned from beer in the Bavarian Beer Act of 1516.
Whoa.
And mushrooms and henbane and other plants were used in meads, psychoactive beers, and celebrated by people practicing pagan religions in Europe in the forest. And the struggle between, I believe, Christianity, monotheism versus polytheism, and nature-based religions, there was a collision course. And then under pressure of the church, they banned the addition of these plants that could be your gateway to God, because the church wanted to be in between you and God. They wanted to get the tithings. They wanted to be your portal and control access to the divine. And so these mushrooms are looked upon as being specifically a threat.
And somewhere in hour 2, I heard on Rogan quietly becomes the entire research process. No follow-up reading required. Case closed. Pass the gravy. There is one more layer worth looking at. A lot of what the uncle learns from Rogan, he is also being sold. On it, the supplement and fitness company founded by Aubrey Marcus, sold to Unilever in 2021, is described as co-founded by Rogan. He received equity in the company in exchange for podcast ads. They sell kettlebells, nootropics, and protein supplements. Athletic Greens, a long-running show sponsor, sells the daily greens powder Rogan has described drinking every morning. The things Rogan talks about on the show and the things the show advertises have over the years become almost completely indistinguishable. He mentions doing cold plunges in the morning, and there's also an ad for cold plunge equipment in the same episode. None of that is a conspiracy. It is just extremely good brand alignment. The uncle trusts the host. The host uses the products.
I take nothing.
Okay, this is what you're going to get. I'm going to give you this. Just take this one, and I'll get you some more. I'll send you some more. That's Alpha Brain. That's
feeling
the black label Alpha Brain. That is the top of the food chain Alpha Brain, the strongest one.
Am I going to see unicorns?
No. It helps memory. Okay. It's really good for memory, and it's really good for focus. It gives you like a little extra juice mentally. Now, if you're a moron, you're not going to notice it. Like, I tried it, fucking shit, it's bullshit, snake oil. Trust me, as someone who makes a living using his brain, there's certain things that you can take that are not bad for you, that are just nutrients that enhance brain function.
The uncle buys the products. The cycle is clean, legal, and has made a significant number of wellness companies very wealthy. But it does mean something interesting about the information environment. The uncle is getting his worldview, his supplement stack, his fitness philosophy, and his kettlebell from essentially the same source. That is a kind of consolidation that talk radio at its peak would have envied. So pull the whole thing together. None of this was the plan. It was a perfect storm of specific ingredients arriving at exactly the right moment. A guy who had already seen the inside of the mainstream machine and wanted to build something without its rules. A format, long, loose, no agenda, that was genuinely countercultural at a time when everything else was shrinking. A clip machine that introduced the show to people who would never have found a 3-hour podcast on their own. Platform deals that made it inescapable, and a back catalog deep enough that once you found it, you were never going to finish. On top of all of that, a persona. Curious, regular guy, self-deprecating about his own knowledge gaps, more interested in the question than the answer. That made 3 hours feel like hanging out rather than being lectured to. A lot of shows have tried the long-form format and not landed the same way, because the host was too polished or too guarded. Rogan, for better or worse, sounds like himself. And sounding like yourself consistently, over 15 years, builds a different kind of loyalty than content alone. He did not set out to become the default voice in your uncle's garage, your barber's shop, your Lyft driver's car. He started podcasting on Christmas Eve 2009 because he wanted to talk to his friends and see what happened. The world built the empire around him, episode by episode, clip by clip, platform deal by platform deal. He's not just a podcast anymore. He is the national Bluetooth speaker for guys who don't want to feel alone while they work. And the reason your uncle hasn't run out of things to say in about 6 years. So drop it in the comments. Who is the uncle in your life? The dad? The co-worker? The guy at the gym who can't finish a sentence without "I heard on Rogan"? I want to hear the most unhinged thing your uncle has confidently told you was basically confirmed on a podcast. The wilder, the better. Like the video if you made it to the end. Subscribe for more of this, more media autopsies, more loving but honest breakdowns of how the internet actually works in 2026.